Item 1, 2, 3, 7. Motion regarding restoration of Oireachtas Library and reading room. Could I call on Sir Michael McDougall to move the motion?
I move the motion.
You're sharing time?
No, you're going to take the
8. You're seconding the motion. Senator Victor Boyne second the motion.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. 8 and 1 second.
Cathaoirleach, this motion speaks for itself, but I want to put on the record the background to it. The Commission of the Oireachtas has not decided anything in relation to the closure of the members' reading room. A committee of the Dáil Committee on Procedure, Standing Orders and Reform has received a submission but has not approved it, which would mean that the existing reading room, which is the shared facility of both senators and Dáil deputies, would be converted into a 5th committee room. I want to put on the record of this House that the fixed estimated costs for making that conversion involve an outlay of €3.7 million, and the annual extra cost from having it as a committee room would amount to €1.63 million, meaning that in the first year of operation, this would cost more than €5 million. The proposal is being mooted at the Dáil Committee on the basis that the Dáil is going to expand, it needs to be more family friendly, and that somehow if items such as Taoiseach's questions and Minister's questions were taken in the reading room below, that the Dáil could sit fewer hours. No proposal has been made, for instance, to use Mondays or Fridays, or indeed to ask for the use of this chamber on occasions when it's not in use by this House, but this proposal has been put forward. It has been represented to the library staff that this proposal is unstoppable. The direction of travel was the phrase that was used, is clear. It will be approved, they say, within the next 3 weeks, and there is nothing they can do about it. This means that the library staff in this House will be no longer here at all. They'll be in a premises in Merrion Square. There will be no direct face-to-face librarian service, even though their print collection is in the basement of Leinster House 2000. This will be the only Parliament in Western Europe, Parliament House in Western Europe, which does not have a members' reading room and library service, if this goes ahead. Apart from the scandalous cost involved in it, of over €5 million, the whole project has been, I have to say, clouded in mystery and almost the subject of deception, because the affected members of the staff of the Oireachtas, the library members, were told that the members were in favour of this project. Now, I, as you know, as members in this House will know, wrote out to all the members of both houses of the Oireachtas and asked them where they stood on this issue. And I can tell you that they stood by a very clear majority, far more than 60% who responded, and practically none who responded in favour of this proposal, but more than 60% of the members of the House indicated to me formally that they supported the maintenance of and reinstatement of the room. Now, I want to say something about the actual project itself. Apart from the expenditure of that amount of money, it has involved the serious mutilation of a protected structure. Members will see from the photographs that I circulated that the existing fittings and furnishings were removed, but what you may not know is that the floorboards were all taken up, and they've now been replaced by chipboard on beams. The original floorboards of a protected structure have been taken out. The entire character of the room has been dramatically changed. It looks like a semi-used back room in a down-at-heel hotel somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It no longer looks respectable. It no longer is an inviting space to go to. And if this proposal goes ahead, the staff will be no longer available in this house. The only contact between members of the Oireachtas and the library staff will be by computer. So that's where we're going now. Now, let's be clear about this. Leinster House is a shared house between two houses of the Oireachtas. A committee of one house has no right. By the way, they haven't even agreed to this. They were just confronted with these figures recently. The Dáil Committee, which is a small committee of people, most of whose members, I think, are against it. But no committee of the Dáil has the right to say that the Seanad's facilities are going to be abolished in this way without consulting this House. And no effort whatsoever, as far as I know, has ever been made to consult the relevant committees of this House or the members of this House, or to even canvass the general opinion of members of this House as to whether this proposal is acceptable or not. So I'm not here to cause trouble, but when I saw the vandalism that has already occurred by the mutilation of that room and the ripping up of the floorboards, which is a breach, and I want to put this on the record, it's a breach of Section 51 of the Planning and Development Act of 2000 to do this to a preserved structure. If you own a house in Merrion Square, you can't rip up the floorboards and put down chipboard instead without consulting the planning authority. But we have done this in this House, or it has happened in this House, without our knowledge. There is a proposal, for the purpose of completeness, to open a room in what is called the Duke's Library. And I can give members photographs of what's proposed, and it looks like a sort of what I would describe as a photo from an IKEA catalogue with about 6 or 7 armchairs in a room to substitute for the service which is available in the library at the moment. Members are entitled to go in and talk to librarians who have given this House incredible, politically neutral service for decades now, and confidential service as well. They're entitled to go and see periodicals, regional papers published and the like, and they've been doing that for years. There is no majority in Dáil Éireann for this proposal. There's no majority in this House for the proposal. There is no decision by the Oireachtas Commission in favour of this proposal. The library staff have been told by some people on the staff of the Oireachtas that this now cannot be stopped, and they've been told to effectively take their medicine on this issue and to accept that they are being moved out of this House in favour of this proposal. So I have no hesitation in proposing this proposal. I think it has all party support in this House. I think it's a scandalous insult to this House that it has been progressed to the point it is. To waste $5 million on this proposal for the very dubious, if you look at the documents which I have here, the dubious reasons, such as the gender quota will increase to 40% of the next election, as if that is going to, for candidates, as if that is going to change the sitting hours of the Dáil per se. I don't understand that proposition. And that there'll be 10 more members and therefore more requirement for speaking time. Big joke. So I just want to say, I find what has happened repugnant. I find it really annoying that when I canvassed all the members of the Oireachtas on this issue, the response of some people was to say, well, it's going to go ahead anyway, even though no competent body has approved it, even though what they've done already is unlawful, and even though what they've done already is to rob this House of its facility without even a pretense of consultation. So I move the motion.
Seconded by Senator McDougall. Or
I speak now.
you can, no, you
I'll
can
second that. Formally second.
second it. Yeah. Thank you. You can come back in.
Yeah.
And next up is Senator Lisa Chambers.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and I just want to agree with the motion that's tabled before the House and thank and commend Senator McDougall for bringing this issue to our attention. I think it might have passed us by had it not been highlighted by our colleague, and the message that I think will be clear from probably every speaker will be that there was no consultation. We were not consulted on this. It is a facility for the Oireachtas for both houses. And I think it says a lot about the Oireachtas if there isn't going to be a library facility and a reading room in what we currently have. I mean, what type of parliament do we want? Surely we should be encouraging use of facilities like that as opposed to removing access to them. And I do genuinely feel for the librarians who've given fantastic service, and it's a very sorry way to be treated in terms of the role that they play here and the value that they have. I'm not sure where we go from here, what actions we take out of this motion. I might suggest that it could be a matter to put on the CPPO agenda for further discussion. Certainly, to my knowledge, it was not discussed at CPPO, which is where we have all of our discussions around matters concerning this House and decisions of that nature. So that certainly needs to be addressed, and I would completely concur with Senator McDougall's remarks that it's not reasonable, nor is it okay for one House to make a decision affecting the other House without consultation. And I don't think the same would happen in reverse, nor would it be allowed. And there should be due respect given to both Houses of the Oireachtas. So I just want to place on the record my support. I'm fairly certain, I think all of the Fianna Fáil senators have given support to this motion. And I think had it not been for the work of Senator McDougall, many of us wouldn't have been aware as to what had happened. Interesting point raised around the ripping up of floorboards and whether that's compliant with the planning laws. Certainly it seems as though there might have been a more kind of laissez-faire approach taken to adhering to those things inside this House. And there are questions to be answered in that regard. And it may seem like a minor thing to those looking in, and it may seem as though it is irrelevant, but it matters in the Oireachtas that facilities like this and decisions taken that affect members, that members are consulted, that decisions are not taken for us and on our behalf without us being told about them or asked for our views. Because it might be the library today, what will it be tomorrow, and what will happen further down the line. So there has to be, I think, a healthy respect for one another in these houses in terms of the Oireachtas staff and how we run the houses, and also for the members that work in this House, because the decisions taken today, and whenever all of us leave this House, there will be new senators coming in and UTDs coming in. It's important that we maintain those facilities for future generations as well, and that this is an Oireachtas that we can be proud of the facilities that it offers. And I just think it sends a bad message, or a wrong message, that we don't value that type of a facility. It's an important part of the offering here in Leinster House. It is widely valued, I think, by all members, and certainly I have not heard one single member in support of the removal of the library and its staff. I think I had heard is the plan to allow it be an additional committee room as and when is needed, or an event space. If that is the proposal, I think that's quite worrying. There's no reason why the library, a bit like the Shannon Chamber, cannot on occasion be used for event purposes. That already happens. So there's no need to remove the facilities that are there. It can still be used as an event space. And as it stands, yes, we are tight-ish in terms of committee space, but every committee gets their slot and the place works fine. And we're all accommodated. So I don't think that's a huge challenge currently. And as I understand it, there are no proposals to add any new committees. So I'm not sure why the extra room is needed. So I think some of the rationale for this proposal doesn't really make sense to a lot of us, and is not properly explained in terms of the reasoning behind it. And again, I'll finish on this point. You know, who is making the decisions, and who should be making the decisions? And it does seem as though the lack of consultation on this has really irked members, and has really got people's backs up for the reasons as I've outlined. So I'll just commend the motion to the House. Happy to support it on behalf of the Fianna Fáil group, and to thank Senator McDougall for tabling the motion and for giving us an opportunity to have our say and put our views on the record, because it's the first time we've had an opportunity to say how we feel about this issue in relation to the library reading room.
Thank you. Before I call on the next speaker, could I welcome Deputy John Hart to the gallery, along with the Board of Social Enterprise Part is here as well. You're most welcome. Thank you for coming to Shannon today. I hope you enjoy your visit to Leinster House. Anish, Senator Sean Coyne.
I'd also like to support the motion. As a former member of the committee of the House of Oireachtas Commission, I should say, I was aware of the Forum on Family-Friendly and Inclusive Parliaments in relation to the suggestion that a second Dáil chamber would be an addition, which could also be used in terms of committee space. And look at that. People would have different views on that. I think from time to time, certainly we could do with additional space, such as committee space. I know as a member of the Health Committee from time, if you want to bring in the Minister in the morning on something urgent, it may be a case that there are no space till Thursday evening that doesn't suit, or something like that. So I could agree with the suggestion that there is a need for additional space. You know, that would possibly make sense, and there was a suggestion, as I said, from this forum. The question then, however, is where that space should be located, and certainly there was no agreement on any proposals in relation to the reading room. I think we all saw this previous chamber in the previous Shannon in relation to the alternative facility, and I know efforts were made, I believe, by the previous Commission to see whether that space could be retained for an extra committee, for functions, even as a second Dáil chamber. That would be a preferable option, but that would be something that would have to be agreed between the museum and the Commission itself, and I think that would be preferable. The Oireachtas Library was, the structure is there, it's still a fine room in terms of its facade, but the changes that have been made have removed the furniture and fittings that added so much and basically made the room as it was. Now, I won't pretend that I was a huge user of the facility, and perhaps that's part of the reason behind this. Perhaps, and again, other members would have to speak for themselves, perhaps it wasn't being used sufficiently. That's not to say it wouldn't be in the future. That's not to say it shouldn't be retained. That's not to say that obviously a decision was made to change the structure or remove the furniture. In relation to some of the rationale or the reasons given, including that on page 6 of the report presented to the Commission, in general, longer sitting times may have a discouraging effect on persons who may otherwise consider a career in politics. I doubt it. I doubt it, to be honest about it. I think social media might have more of an impact on people considering a career in politics. Abuse you might get, public meetings, different things that people might have a reason for not entering politics. I think most people accept that politics, certainly, you know, for those perhaps more so in the Dáil or wanting to get into the Dáil, it's not a 9-to-5 job. And anyone that goes into, whether it be a council or the Dáil mainly, thinking it's a 9-to-5 job, well then they'll get a rude awakening. And I think, so I don't believe that the sometimes long hours that perhaps people might have, you know, it's not every night. It's not every week. There are summer recesses and things like that. So I don't see that as being a rationale for removing reading room or for requiring additional chambers. I think, you know, late nights, in my view, from time to time, also add to the politics. It also adds to the something nice about politics, to be honest about it. The theatre of politics, if you like, that maybe only practising politicians appreciate. But I think, you know, sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't see we should be saying we should be finishing at 6 o'clock and resume the next day. I think, and I also think, you know, for those rural deputies and senators who come up on a Tuesday and they're here on a Tuesday and Wednesday night, irrespective, they don't go home bar an emergency. You know, those members are here anyway. And late nights aren't an issue for those. They would have issues with votable business on a Thursday or late sittings on a Thursday, but I don't think it will be a deterrent to those that are up here anyway. So I just don't buy that issue. In relation to speaking time, I think as a former whip in the Dáil as well, the biggest issue you'd have at the moment is trying to find people to speak on second stage on certain bills. And maybe that's because politics is down to the soundbite. It's down to the TikTok and the Instagram small, short posts. And, you know, talking to more established politicians or long-serving politicians, they would agree that the second stage debates and the amount of time spent on those, the amount of speakers, is less than it would have been in the past. And I think there has to be a reason behind that, that there isn't the level of speaking as might have been in the past. So I don't agree again that's an issue. I mean, there was very few people suggesting to me that they couldn't get in a second stage during my time as a whip. And even now, there's generous time allocations in the main. There may be the odd occasion that can be, you know, by agreement, extra time could be provided. So I don't think that's an issue. So I just don't agree that certainly the premise that, as I said, late evenings would be a turn off for people entering politics. I think politics is you know, a great profession. It attracts people who are interested in public service, who are interested in community, who are interested in their party or particular causes that they've come in on the back of, and they want to bring the knowledge and experience and passion that they have to the floor of the Seanad, of the Dáil, of indeed the council chambers as well. So I don't see that as being something that would turn people off. I think it is a privilege to be in these houses, and if it is required on the odd occasion that you sit till 10 o'clock or half 10 or 11 o'clock, well, so be it. I don't see that is something that should be a no-no. It doesn't happen every night, as I said. You know, I disagree with that premise. In terms of the need for extra space, look, there is increasing pressure on committee rooms from time to time, but I think they can find other space. I know they're looking at options in Agricultural House as well for space, for offices, for staff, for new TDs. Perhaps they could look at some other area to find a committee room, but I think removing a facility that, as Senator McDowell has said, is present in every parliament across the world, is beautiful, or still a beautiful structure, but was a beautiful building in terms of its fit out. I think that would be something that could only be done by agreement of both houses. As I said, it is a shared facility, and that agreement hasn't been forthcoming, not at the Commission, not from individual members, and it's not something that the changes that have been made already, I'm not sure who agreed to them or where did that come from. I don't think that agreement came from the Commission, so how did it actually happen? Who was informed the floorboards were being ripped up? I certainly don't remember that. Who was informed that the furniture was going to be removed next month or next week or tomorrow? I'm not sure where that information was relayed either.
Senator Victor Boyne.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. And firstly, I want to commend my colleague and friend, Senator Michael McDougall, for driving this initiative. I have to say at the very outset, let's be careful what we're doing here, and I know we have the full support of this House. If this motion is approved, it's calling on the Houses of the Oireachtas Commission to abandon its proposals to convert the space into additional committee rooms and event spaces. And I think that's to be commended. I want to say at the very outset too that I fully commend the library and research, because that's what they are. They're professional librarians, not bookkeepers. They're librarians. They're not book attendants. They're not library attendants. They are qualified librarians and researchers who draw on from their team, both here and in other parts of the facility, to advise parliamentarians, be they senators or Dáil deputies, in their work in drafting primary legislation. And we get, as Senator Michael McDougall said, independent and impartial and confidential advice that isn't shared with anybody else except with consultation with us. So it's critically important. It's particularly important in the independent benches of these houses because we don't have the same resources. More important to independent senators and TDs who do not have the huge bank of resources to support them in independently validating legislation that's put before these houses, of which we have to put through its 5 stages of a bill. So I think that's important. I think there are some very important points we need to make here. This is a protected structure. I took the time to look at a number of architectural conservation reports in relation to the restoration of this building. And I was at all times reminded it was a protected structure. And the designation of a protected structure is a structure that is, by the planning authority's view, in this case it's Dublin City Council. Dublin City Council are the planning authority for this particular part of Dublin. For the whole of Dublin, might I add. So the planning authority, and a protected structure is a structure of special interest from any one of the following: architectural, historical, archaeological, artistic, cultural, scientific, social and technical. So any one of those criteria, and the elected members designated this building at some point. This building cannot be removed from the record of protected structures without very, very special provisions, and I don't think it would ever happen in this particular case. So therefore it is a reserved function, first and foremostly, of Dublin Local Authority, Planning Authority, who are empowered to carry out enforcement and ensure that there is no breaches of the law. Secondly, there is no exemption in the Planning and Development Bill, or the Act as it is now, for development other than under very special circumstances where you would have to make a declaration in relation to a conservation architect employed by Dublin City and validated by them. So there's a whole range of issues that need to be dealt with. I had an opportunity to meet with the past members here at a lunch that was hosted by the Oireachtas last Friday, and the amount of people that raised it with me and were appalled, members of all sides of the House who would have normally come in here from time to time and use that library facility either to read the papers or whatever, and they were shocked by it. They just could not believe it was happening. I also think it's important to put out a call, for those who don't know, that all our provincial and our regional papers and our local papers are filed in here every week. So TDs and senators from all over the country go in there, particularly on a Thursday, but all during the week, to look at those papers. So I'd say to the provincial papers looking in here today, or the local papers, or the county papers, or radios, they need to be careful, because I'm not too sure if that facility, while it might be here in the drawer, the facilities to sit down and put these papers out in front of us and read them may not be there. I am deeply concerned about that. So there are many, many issues that we need to look at. But more importantly, a room is a room. And for those looking in here tonight, this room that we're in, this great Senate chamber, is more or less a reflection of the library, the building below. The library, a reading room, research place, is down below us. It is more or less the same footprint. It is the most beautiful stucco ceiling and architecture and fireplaces. The furniture that was in it has been dispersed around. I can tell you what the furniture is. I can tell you what the lamps are, and the light standards, and the brass fittings, and the lovely glazed globes. But surely someone knows, and someone has to be accountable. But what I also can tell you, this building is owned by the Office of Public Works. The Office of Public Works owns this building, and we have a minister for the Office of Public Works. And I intend contacting him tomorrow to ask him what's he going to do about it. He is a custodian of this building. He is legally responsible for this building. We also have a Minister for Heritage down in the Customs House. A Customs House which is housing, local government and heritage, which has close working relationships with NGOs and heritage people, groups and advocates, but also with Dublin City Council. So I think we should perhaps pursue Dublin City Council and ask them to investigate the alleged abuses or damage to this protected structure. I'm mindful to do it. I'll have to reflect on this debate in the next few days. So I think the necessary enforcement authorities need to hold the establishment here to book. Who made the decision? Well, now it appears that no one made the decision. Who's driving the decision to take all the furniture out, disperse the books, effectively push the people out of here? Because one of the things we value in this house is that direct contact with our librarians and researchers. And traditionally, you'll know yourself, Cathaoirleach, and every member here will know, you open the door into the library, and traditionally there used to be 4 desks in each corner, and you could go over and you could speak one-to-one with one of our excellent library and research team, and you could explain that you had a difficulty navigating a piece of legislation, you wanted more background, you wanted detail, you wanted to look at best practice in other jurisdictions, how it applied, and you could say all of this. And they would put you at ease, and they would tease out some of the issues, help clarify your thought processes, and go away and give you a timeline and say, I'll come back to you with a preliminary report, but if you need further information. It is invaluable. I simply could not do my work in this House without the support of that brilliant, dedicated team of people. So we're talking about a dedicated group of people. We're talking about an architectural conservation, a protected structure, beautiful room that was set up with lovely furniture that's scattered all around rooms. Some of it, I can't say it's all scattered around the rooms. I do not know if it's all in the building. We need to know that. But we have to hold people accountable. We have to reclaim, hold on to, guard and protect the powers and the functions and the facilities that facilitate us to do our job as parliamentarians. Nothing less should we make. We should not apologise for making the case. So I say to the Commission, I say to the Cathaoirleach, I say it to the Ceann Cála, I say it to the Chief Executive of these Houses and the Commission. Pull together, work together, consult with us. We should not have to come into this parliamentary chamber tonight to get some sort of focus and attention on the issues that are so important to this House. Let's support one another. Let's pull together. Let's protect our heritage, our parliamentary democracy, our parliamentary engagement, our facilities that allow us to do the job. But from tonight, the public will now know. No doubt the media will carry this story in the next few days. And I hope they too engage. And I hope they too write to TDs and senators and ministers and say what's going on. But my appeal is the Minister for the Office of Public Works, OPW own this building, the Minister for Heritage has a role, Dublin City Planning Enforcement have a role, and I hope they will wake up, investigate and ask the hard questions. But let us not give up. This is the beginning of a campaign that will not cease and should not stop until the furniture is put back in that room. We are guaranteed the services that we're used to, and we can get on with doing the work that we're elected to do, which is to defend democracy, bring new laws into this land, but bring them in on the basis that we're well informed and we have the background information that make it necessary to do the work. Thank you.
Senator Joe O'Reilly.
Can I at the outset both thank and congratulate Senator Michael McDowell for bringing forward this issue, and it was his vigilance that has brought it to our attention, and it's very typical of him that he would be concerned about such an issue, but we are grateful to you for this, Senator McDowell. It's an important service you've done tonight, that this cannot go under the radar. Before I go any further, I happen to have the privilege of working alongside in this House Mary O'Connor, who comes from one of the most illustrious literary families in this country, as you would know, Lass Cathaoirleach, from Kerry, from the famous Keane family of Kerry. And she said to me going down tonight, she said, earlier today, she said, surely you're going down to speak in the chamber about taking away the library. She said it would be a shocking thing that in a House of Parliament, in a national parliament, we'd be without a library, and that on the campus in its present location. And she said, surely you're going down to do that. It would be unthinkable. So that's a view from somebody on the staff there. I'd say that's a widely shared view in the staff. So it's just an interesting thing to bring that to bear on it too, and that's coming from somebody who has the credentials to speak on stuff like this. But anyway, so be it. I want to just say that, first of all, that aesthetically the room as it was beautiful. It was a beautifully done room, beautifully decorated, very relaxing, very pleasant room. One of the nicest rooms in the buildings and in any building that I know. And it is shocking that that has been made. It was better described by Senator McDowell than I can, but just to say that it has been essentially desecrated, for not to bring in religious terminology, but it has been made into a shambles of a setup compared to what it was. It was a very beautiful room, and that on the front of the page we have the picture of the room in its original condition there, and I think it's so beautiful and should not, both as a protected structure and otherwise, shouldn't be touched. So I just want to make that point. I want to say that I personally was one who really enjoyed using the library research facility. I found the library staff extraordinarily pleasant to go into, extraordinarily helpful, and it was the case that there were around the room that you could go in and chat and that they would help you, and I then often follow that up with a phone call, and they would prepare pieces for important issues, etc., and do research, and they were all highly professional and qualified, and even they're not going away as the sense, but if they're off campus, if they're off centre, if they're not in the building, that personal access, that use will diminish. And I think that's a great pity. And in fact, as Senator Chambers said, it's an unthinkable concept that you would have a national parliament without a reading room, without research facilities, and without that staff available. So I think that's the second thing I'd like to say. There was a very good point made by Senator McDougall in his excellent presentation of the issue, because he's clearly thought it through and researched it. And apart from drawing our attention to the horrendous cost, I think you did say something in the region of 5.7 million, if I'm not sure of the figures, but they're on the record here. But apart from the cost, Senator McDougall makes the practical point, that we could use this chamber when it wouldn't be in normal use for committees, for whatever. And in fact, it has been used and is used occasionally for other reasons. And there's nothing to prevent that. There's nothing to prevent using a number of other buildings around the place and showing a bit of practicality and adaptation to facilitate that. I don't fully, my great regard, obviously, for the depth of thought and the great depth of thought of my colleague, Senator Kime. I'm not totally in agreement with him. While it's a lovely concept and we enjoyed the idea of the late night theatre, I do think there may be a basis, and there is a case for having a family-friendly parliament, but having a family-friendly parliament does not dictate removing the reading room downstairs. It's possible. We should do something about the hours. There can be things done there. As the proposer of the motion said earlier, we can look at the Mondays, the Fridays, we can look at an earlier start. There are many options there. Look at the use of a number of rooms, etc. All those options are there to achieve the family-friendly dimension. And there is a case for that if we are to widen and to have gender equality, to have a more inclusive parliament. But of course, I get the point made by Senator Kine that there is something lovely in the theatre of late night sittings and the cut and thrust that goes with all of that. And occasionally that takes place. But I do personally think we have to look at the family-friendly parliament concept and advance it, but it's not implicit in that you would remove the room. There's something slightly almost barbaric. It's like when, if you're not to fully compare it, but it's like when the hordes came to destroy ancient Greece and Rome. It's wrong to remove things that are aesthetically beautiful, wrong to remove the facility. Now, it might be argued, and it will be argued, I haven't discussed this with any of the people who advanced the concept, but I assume that one of the arguments is that it doesn't get used that much. But that's not a reason not to have it. What we should be doing is encouraging more use of it and trying to have a sort of a standing orders and a procedural situation in here that would dictate people researching more and using it more. And so if there's a deficit of use or a lack of use, the solution to that is not its removal, it's to increase its use. And I must say, and I didn't get to do it that often, but none of us get to do these things as often as we'd like. But I used to find it, the few times or the number of times I got to do it, it's really relaxing to go in and sit there and just unwind in there. It's a very therapeutic exercise in its own right, if it's only to look at a newspaper or whatever. And then, as you did say earlier, and as Senator Boyan said, you then have access to the professional people that are in there after you do go in there. And there is a point made earlier by Senator McDougall in relation to the regional press. There is an importance in that we would have the regional press readily available to all of us. It's important that the Cavans and the Kerrys and all of these places have that their local papers are read here, that people can, even discussing any legislation, to see their impacts locally and see what's important to people at the local level. So, all in all, I think I strongly support the motion on a personal level, but also it's the view of my group that, and well articulated by our main spokesman on the issue here, Senator Kine, that we support strongly the motion proposed by Senator McDougall, the arguments he makes and the subsequent arguments of Senator Byen as well, and Senator Kine himself. So essentially what we're saying, a beautiful aesthetic room and a protected structure as a physical entity should not be interfered with, should be left intact, number one. Then the living reality within it of people going in to relax and read is very, very important and very valuable, and that should be. And then the third thing being the professional access, the access to researchers, to librarians within it. No, it wouldn't. It's not. It's hardly the best signal to send out about our Parliament that we'd be removing reading rooms. It might feed into some people who have a pretty cynical narrative about the place, and we don't want to do that. Thank you.
Margaret, Senator Tom Clone.
So I just want to commend the work that Senator McDougall has done on this issue. And actually, as a newcomer to these houses, I was actually shocked to learn that the library in its current form was to be dispensed with. I've always had access to a library as an academic. And I would say, what is a library? A library is the most powerful engine for arriving at the truth in terms of data, in terms of evidence, in terms of facts, nuance. And we as parliamentarians are synthesizers of culture, of economy, of public policy. And to do that without an evidence base is to operate blindly. And we have, in the history of the Republic, we have had periods of intellectual and ethical failure. The most recent being during the years of the Celtic Tiger and the subsequent catastrophic crash, the impact and reverberations which are still being experienced and endured by our people. And as a consequence, according to the Edelman Barometer of Trust, politicians and journalists are the least trusted professionals in Irish society. And in order to restore that trust and build on that trust, we have to come forward with evidence-based policies, evidence-based legislation. And where do you find that evidence? You find it in the library. And I would also speak to what Senator McDougall and Senator Boyan said about the library staff. Librarians are not the cataloguers of information. These are very qualified, postgraduate qualifications, senior civil servants, public servants, who are experts in the gatekeeping and management of information. And we live in a period, this House is obsessed with misinformation, disinformation, and the threats and challenges posed by artificial intelligence. And here we have a cohort of professionals in the House, in the Houses, whose expertise resides and lies in that area of the methodological approaches, the systematic approaches of telling the difference between what is misinformation, disinformation, and then evidence-based factual approaches to what we do. So I would say often what happens in the library or libraries is subversive. I've had my own experiences as a researcher exploring what constitutes best practice, for example, in the international military with regard to the deployment of female personnel, and then benchmarking that international best practice with our own armed forces. We find that the library allows us to make a contribution to knowledge that actually transforms that organisation for the better. You talked about the taking up of the floorboards. That is an act of wanton vandalism. But to remove the library as a resource for parliamentarians, that's actually an act of sabotage. And it's an act of collective self-harm if we, as TDs and senators, allow this to take place by being passive and by omission, allowing this to proceed. It should not happen. It should be stopped. We would be the only National Assembly in Europe, as Senator McDowell pointed out, that would not have a library service. And that would make us the laughing stock of Europe and of the world. I did a brief search using the library resources and found that every national parliament beyond Europe, in Istanbul, in Ankara, in Australia, in Washington, everybody is proud. These are the primary national library services of those states and republics. And if we were to allow ours to just be disbanded, it is not only an act of collective self-harm, but it is also extremely disrespectful to our colleagues who work there and who are part of this community and are part of the fabric of this community. So I would support Senator McDougall's motion. I would thank him for the work that he's done on this, and just to reiterate how shocked I was to learn that this, absolutely invaluable and critical support will be taken away, because we are entering a very challenging period with regard to misinformation and disinformation, and it is absolutely vital that, to avoid the ethical and intellectual failures of the past, that everything we do is evidence-based. And you only find that, as per the Socratic method, the Aristotelian method, is in dialogue with our library staff. And if they are off-site, or if this is by some penny-pinching, cost-cutting Mandarin is put into an online format, that absolutely vital human engagement will not take place. And we cannot rely on algorithms and search engines to provide the existential moral agency that we require as a parliament. So I fully endorse the motion, and I would say this is a very, very pressing issue. Not just for us in this House, because of the decisions that we make here are of, absolute critical importance to this Republic. So it's in everybody's interests that we absolutely resist and restore fully the reading room and the library service to these houses. Gurmagad.
Michael McDougall, you have 4 minutes.
Well, the arguments against are non-existent, so I won't delay the House any further, but I do want to thank all the members who have spoken in support of the motion and for their kind words for the proposers of this motion. And I just want to say, when people say that the direction of movement, direction of travel is in one direction, and they tell one member of the House, of the other House, who spoke to me this evening, it's a fait accompli. There's no reason, it's no stopping it. And then when you actually inquire and dig down into it and find out that no competent body has made this decision, the Oireachtas Commission hasn't made this decision, the committee to which this presentation, which is so incriminating, was made, hasn't made a decision on it. And then you add to that the very simple piece of arithmetic that my good PA, Samantha Long, asked every member of the Oireachtas where they stood on the issue. And the great majority said they were against this step. In those circumstances, it is not merely time to cry halt. It is time to tell the people who have misjudged the sense of the members of the Oireachtas, each House, that they must reverse what they have done, and that this House should be treated with some elementary respect, and its members should not find themselves deprived of an in-house, face-to-face library and library service for all the reasons that have been mentioned by a decision of a tiny few unaccountable people.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Is motion agreed?
Agreed.
Could I ask the acting leader When is it proposed to sit again?
10:30
10:30 tomorrow?
I'll do at
10:30 tomorrow
10:30, yeah.
morning. Is that agreed? The House stands adjourned until 10:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. Gromagad Galer.